Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today I'm test driving the 2016 Lexus RC 200T. This is the new base model, the 4-cylinder turbo. Now, I've test driven the RC before, the RC 350 with the V6, as well as the RCF with the big V8 in it. And so my question is anything lost in the translation? Is this just as fun to drive as the other two? And is it still worthy of looking at, even though it's got a much less powerful 4-cylinder? One of the first good things about the Lexus RC 200T is that, with exception to its deck lid badge, it looks identical to the RC 350. They haven't downgraded its styling or presentation because you chose the entry-level model. And you can option the RC 200T with all the same upgrades too, one of those being the high-performance F-Sport package that brings more aggressive bodywork, larger 19-inch wheels with summer tires, and an adjustable sport suspension. While its styling and look just a couple years ago was extroverted and envelope-pushing, the competition from Infiniti and others is starting to become just as artistic and daring with their looks. If you watch my reviews before, you know that I've test-driven this car a number of times, as well as the IS, which this shares an interior that's almost identical. The dash is the same, the seats are the same with the F-Sport, and a lot of, well, pretty much everything is 100% identical. There are a few differences, but this is one of the best interiors in class, I think. I really do like it a lot. I've said that before. The material quality is absolutely top of the class, I think, and the overall design of it, this is something that when you sit in this car, you feel like you're sitting down in it. You're cocooned, you're safe, and you have a nice sight line still, even though you're sitting down low in this. Some of the other sports coupes in this class, the BMW in particular, you feel like you're sitting up more on it. And this one, you're definitely down in it. There's some very nice materials in here. You have genuine aluminum trim here and over here on the dash. Now, you can get wood in this, but with the F-Sport, it defaults to the spun aluminum look. And you've got the soft trims here with the stitching. A very sort of semi-organic look that Lexus has going that they've been doing very well with, I think. And the F-Sport steering wheel that comes in this, again, something I just really like a lot. It's got the paddle shifters up here. They feel of quality, and of course it has power telescope and tilt. Ahead of it is an instrument cluster that's inspired by the LFA supercar, and by that I mean that you can press the button and it slides over, and with the complete digital display that's back there, it gives you the impression that the gauge is actually moving. But what it actually does, it enables you to actually go in there and customize the look and feel of it, get the information sets that you want when you're driving around. The only thing I wish that it would do that it doesn't is stay put when you turn the car off. Every time you get back in it, it goes back. And the same can be said for the drive modes here. Drive mode selector goes all the way to Sport Plus. That's awesome, but every time you get in the car, it defaults back to normal. Now, there are a couple things in here that I'm not super jazzed about, and if you watch my reviews, again, you've seen these things before, and that is the little screen in a big screen space. It's just a very strange design aspect. You've got this tiny little screen in a space that's clearly designed for a big screen. Now, I think I'm actually going to get to stop complaining about this, because word on the street is the 2017 model will actually have a proper screen up there. It fills the entire space. That's already been said for the IS. I have to assume the RC will get it as well. One thing that's very good about this interior, aside the fit and finish, aside the design, is these seats. These F-Sport seats are really mother's milk. They're the cat's meow, the woof. They're extremely comfortable. Here it comes with both heating and ventilation. They're fully powered. You've got memory. They're just very comfortable. It's a great place to spend the day doing the business of driving. And I can sit in these things all day and never get tired of sitting here. They're just very well done. Now, the back seat back there is really, I think, more about your insurance rates than it is about having capacity for extra passengers, unless they're kids, maybe a small dog. But to actually let people sit back there, these seats have to be pushed far enough forward that, well, it makes it uncomfortable up here quite a bit. And that has to do with the fact that this does have a 2.5-inch shorter wheelbase than the IS sedan, and even that car has a pretty snug back seat. The trunk space is pretty large as you'd expect and can be expanded by folding the rear seats down for a flat deck to bring home larger items. And under the floor, even with the F-Sport Performance package, is a spare tire instead of an inflator and a can of Fix-A-Flat. Overall, I'm impressed with this interior. The only place I can really complain is that design issue here on the dash, and as I said, I think it's going to be fixed with the 2017 model year. I really like it a lot. It gets 5 stars. The audio and infotainment system in our tester, as mentioned, features a screen mounted high in the dash, but not a touch screen. It's instead controlled by knobs and buttons on the center stack for most used functions, as well as a console-mounted touchpad. And since we're talking about the infotainment system, one thing that's different about this car than the IS is the control. This actually has a touchpad that is very much like using a phone instead of the puck, which is a hard puck that you move around in the sedan and most of the other Lexus cars. I have to say, I really don't like this all that much. It works, the menus are the same, but the problem is the puck. It had a resistive feel to it that actually gave you resistance when you got up against menu buttons and things like that. When you were navigating around, it would give you a tactile feel and resist. And so what this does is it gives you a vibration when you go over buttons and move around, but it doesn't actually stop your finger. It doesn't give you resistance. So what happens is when you're driving around and you get bumped around, it causes you to overshoot your buttons, and sometimes it makes it difficult if you're on a rough road, say, to actually make choices on the menu. So I really wish they'd just stick with the puck instead of try to go with this pseudo high-tech stuff. It's already plenty high-tech. On the upside, the sound from the Mark Levinson audio system is downright spectacular. It's really worth every penny that Lexus asks for it, and it's expensive, but worth it. Now, when it comes to scoring, I do have to point out that when it comes to connectivity, there is no Android Auto connectivity, nor is there Apple CarPlay yet. And also, that touchpad just isn't as good as the puck. Therefore, technology score comes in at 4 or 5 stars. The big news here for the RC200T is what's under the hood. A new for 2016 2-liter turbocharged and direct-injected 4-cylinder engine. Available only with an 8-speed automatic sport shifting transmission, it's good for 241 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. All right, so acceleration is probably the big question here, and so I'm in Sport Plus, I'm at a standstill, and I'm just going to put my foot on it here. Wow, so that was like 1 to 2 seconds delay before this did anything. And now 60. Maybe you can time that on your computer, but published reports on this say 0 to 60 right around 7.5 seconds, give or take a tenth or two. It's a luxury car. So my first blush is the fact that it really feels pretty slow. Now, it's a very refined engine. It's got a nice sound to it. This 8-speed transmission, wonderful, especially in Sport Plus, and that's really where you want it, because if it's anything less than that, it's going to be actually a little bit slower, oddly enough. But what I really want to point out is the fact that this car is heavy. It's a heavy car for this engine. It actually weighs about 150 pounds more than the IS sedan, which is based on the same architecture as this. And oddly enough, when I drove that car, it didn't feel as slow as this. It felt a little quicker. It felt a lot lighter. In fact, it felt probably 500 pounds lighter. So why this car feels so heavy and why it feels so much slower than that one, I can't quite put my finger on. And that also goes to fuel economy. This is rated at 26 combined by the EPA. Not bad, but the problem is, because it's a Turbo 4, you really have to work it to get power, and therefore I've only seen 23 mpg in my week with it, so quite a bit less on the window sticker promises. And I haven't looked at my reviews that I did on the V6, but I'm betting I did at least 23 or better, or pretty close to it. So this isn't necessarily a gas mileage play. Anyway, I put the powertrain at 4 stars. When it comes to ride and handling, this is a Lexus, and that is to say it feels solid, it's quiet, it's very refined in the chassis, almost to a point where I'd almost say it's a little bit too refined. And why I say that is because this car at highway speed, it's actually got a little bit of float in it that one would normally associate with a Buick or a Lincoln cattle guard, but it still corners well. But the thing is, you have to really dial it up to Sport Plus to get it to feel like a sports coupe should, right out of the gate. At least that's my first impression. If you don't have it set there, we're talking Buick Regal action. Now, that said, this does handle quite well because of the fact that you can dial this thing up, and cornering, because this car does have a better front weight balance than the V6 and the V8, of course. It's very well balanced out here on a back road. And as I said, it feels refined. And that's really what Lexus does. They sort of fall on the more luxurious, cushier side of all the cars they compete with. And they tend to almost be sort of like Mercedes-Benz used to be, in that you get that feeling of precision, but you get more of a feeling of cush. And that's what I'm feeling here. So the chassis, even though there's a little bit of float here that I might not like, you can dial it out for the most part. And the steering, very direct, very precise. I love it. Chassis gets 5 stars. No matter what you can say about the handling or performance, one thing Lexus does that's rarely argued is provide quality. Inside and out, this car really shows that even the German brands can learn a thing or two when it comes to fit and finish, paint quality, and rattle-free existence. Quality feel comes in at 5 of 5 stars. Safety too comes in at top of the class with an IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus honor. This is because the RC200T performs with good ratings in all of their tests, including the brutal small overlap crash. But just as important, it's available with a comprehensive crash prevention package. Well, folks, rounding it up for the RC200T, I think my big takeaway here is that this is a pretty expensive sports coupe. At this price, in this particular case, we've got a lot of options here. We're right around $50,000. And the thing is, you can get the V6 for only $3,000 or $4,000 more, and you can get the V6 for this price if you don't put so many options on this thing. And that really is the rub here, because in my opinion, if you're spending money for a luxury sports coupe, you ought to get performance. And, well, in my opinion, it really isn't here. And the V6 is a huge step up in power as well as sound. It's fun to drive, and for my money, I would just maybe skip some options or spend the extra money and get that. And the fuel economy too, man. 23 mpg, isn't that great for a 4-cylinder car? And yeah, I was in the turbo quite a bit, and that really is the thing. When you push the turbo, it drinks the fuel. So I put value at 4 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for the review. I'm Sam Haymar for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. You know, one thing I've always liked about Lexus is the fact that unlike other luxury brands that are out there, not all, but other ones, they really separate themselves from their parent company, Toyota. And that's to say that when you get into a Toyota and spend time there, and then you get into a Lexus, it's not very often that you go, wow, these are cut from the same cloth. Not like some other brands, and I'm just not going to mention their names. There's some luxury brands out there that you get in the expensive one and you get in the cheap one and you find the same radio, you find the same knobs, the same switches, it smells the same. Lexus makes sure that when you spend the money, you feel like you got something different. And that's worth something, I think. Just food for thought. Anyway, if you like the test drive you just saw, click on the link right there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We test drive 1, sometimes 2 vehicles every week, plus we have a new video almost every day. There's always something new. So stay tuned.